Good evening, people. Here we are for another Timor criminal update and space. This one is going to be very short. I don't think I'm going to exceed 1 hour. Therefore, I'm not going to take many questions. It's due to personal reasons. It has nothing to do with the fact that I don't want to discuss anything. It's just strictly a time constraint. The space will be mostly centered around Avdiivka and its current developments. Most of them are positive, two things are negative, and then we have a small interlude about what does it mean for Ukraine to receive or not to receive Western supplies, how much is it coming, when, how, etc., etc. This space will be completed soon enough by another space, probably either tomorrow or Wednesday, mostly because I'm going to speak about some things that I know and I can refer to, but I also need to push forward a lot of things I promised recently, but I didn't do. I'm really sorry for that. Once again, it's been a bit hectic this end of year, and because of my professional life, there are a lot of things that I need to bring to heal, which I haven't managed right yet. But anyway, first and foremost, the good. Avdiivka is finally going back to track because of the lack of geolocations and lack of sources on the ground. I don't know if Timor criminal crew had the same feeling as me, but I had the feeling that they were too much pussyfooting around the southern industrial area. But as usual, the Russian updates are very slow and they are at least 2 to 3 days late. Now, the most important part with them being 2 to 3 days late is that, first of all, okay, we are not 100% sure what's going on, but the most important part is that things are going behind in terms of what we see, but what happens on the ground is completely different, and we are seeing that mostly because of the weather conditions. Normally, all the areas around Avdiivka right now should be snowy, so on many footages we should see snow. Therefore, for instance, when we saw the attack and the expelling of the Ukrainian troops from the industrial area down south, that thing must have happened 2 to 3 days ago. Because we didn't saw much snow around. There wasn't any particular sign on the trees, and everything looked from around the 17th to 21st of November. We have the same thing about a couple of other footages from the Ukrainian side, which show a very fucking bad situation for them. Right now, they are forced to defend beyond the Avdiivka coke plant perimeter up north. You saw the Bradley, it was geolocated. Initially, I geolocated way closer to where I think, but actually it was way beyond, thanks to Creamy Caprice. Once again, Creamy Caprice on TG, guys. Very, very competent geolocator. Sometimes they get it wrong, like for the Gorlivka heap, but it doesn't matter. It's a matter of interpretation. As I said, most of the time it's really a matter of interpretation, and that's why both sides are doing. They are showing only half. Therefore, if you look properly, finally we can see that the pressure both north and south is starting to play. Commander Snooze, guy who's following me, I'm gonna follow him back. I don't even know why the fuck I haven't followed him back. Provided a heat map, so basically a elevation map on the southern part of Avdiivka, and he showed that there is a line or a ridge from where you go east to west, and the ridge is the heights of Avdiivka itself. What the Russians did, contrary to my own plan, I already posted enough things for that because I'm completely baffled by what they did. But it's still, actually, when you think about it, given the fact that it was the hardest position to take, it means that now if they want to attack from Saska-Hotka, it's going to be easier. At least they will not have the flank, their eastern flank, open to attacks from the Ukrainians. Another big situational awareness problem for Ukrainians is that we saw that the Russians are going along the railroad, looking to the Avdiivka plant, and also given where the Bradley was firing to geolocations, the Russians are literally across the fence. So we're speaking about 300 to 500 meters. Is it good? Is it bad? I'd say mostly it's bad because they were in the open. But generally, what we're seeing is that defensive positions that have been taken by the Ukrainians right now, they're all out of Stepove slash Petrovskoye, if you want to speak it, if you want to state the Russian name. And they're outside of the coke plant on the surface. Down there in the buildings and everything, there's something different. But right now, the defensive points are not within the coke plant up north. They are literally outside the perimeter. What they're trying right now to avoid Russian infiltrations within the perimeter, which would make everything far more complicated when it comes to the defense. Why? Because 3 to 4 guys with silencers on specific positions are going to take out 10 to 15 guys if the Ukrainians do not know where the shots are coming from. And also one of the biggest problems that I'm seeing right now is that Russians are installing repeaters where they go. I posted a couple of pictures from the vehicles that went onto the assault that were equipped both with repeaters and counter drone systems. But the most important part in this case is that currently the Russians are trying to do something that I personally find both very cynical, but I spoke about this when the war started, that I said that Russians were going to play the numbers game if things went west and like south actually. And this was before the war. I specified it about the Bayraktar game because I thought that initially the Russians would have taken 1 to 2 months to completely lock down the sky, given the fact they were on movement, and on movement you never know where exactly you're going to put your AD and how effective your AD is going to be, given that your threat is mostly when you're on movement on the ground. Up in the sky is a rather rare occurrence, but on the ground, given that you are advancing enemy territory and you don't know where to expect, and given the rather destitute state of the Russian UAV fleet, it happened what happened. We're not going to remake. But what I said is that the Russians were going to play the numbers game. That's what we're doing even now. If you guys read my critique of Tatarigami's recent thread on Avdiivka, when he says like the Russians have stopped using tanks because they don't have enough of them, I'm going to repeat, it has nothing to do with that. What they wanted is to get into certain positions. The moment it makes sense to do that, and I explained to you, so where the Ukrainians are expelled, they cannot come back. The Russians are going to stop using tanks. They're going to use tanks for bombardment, mostly for fire support, and are going to start pushing with infantry until the Ukrainians are completely out of range. Up north in Stepove, I don't know if you saw, I posted it again. Apparently, at least 2 BTRs have been going to the assault to completely occupy the village. One was hit by a FPV drone. The second one went back unharmed. Apparently, once again, we don't know everything. We're gonna have to see at least 1 or 2 days to see how it works. As I said, Ukrainians did the exact same. They shot the Bradley hitting a position in Stepove and then going away. They cut the video, and then we had to see from the Russian side that indeed the Bradley was hit by a FPV while going towards Berdishi. So in this case, all these developments, the movement, mechanized or motorized movement toward Stepove, the creep along the railroad towards the AKZ, the creep towards the first line of defense on the coke plant AKZ, and then of course the push from the south on. I still sustain the wrong axis, the harder axis, but still very interesting because now that I have it, they're going to have a complete overview of the lower positions within the quote-unquote valley towards Avdiivka. The follow-up is going to be, as I said, we'll go back to the normal plan, the nimble plan, the assault plan, going through Tsarska Khodka, occupying the hill over there, cutting the second line of defense down the valley and on the vis-a-vis at the 9th micro district, and then slowly pushing towards first the church that is in the valley that we saw the Ukrainians go through to flee the positions that they were still occupying. And then secondly, going to the Metallurg Street. One day at the Metallurg Street, you're going to understand why the Metallurg Street is so important, because it's the widest street on the lower south part of Avdiivka. So they can literally use it as a physical barrier and a physical control map. If the Russians are there within 2 to 3 weeks, guys, it's done. Avdiivka is done, because in order to resupply whatever is remaining up north, they cannot use Lastochkine anymore, given that alleyway, the Metallurg Street, gives straight on the 9th microdistrict. And if you start to get up high in a couple of rather high buildings on the Metallurg Street, you're going to completely oversee the lower plateau going towards Semenivka. So basically, once the Russians are at the Metallurg Street, the 9th district is fucked. And what the Russians are doing on the 9th district, everybody was complaining about this, is literally UMPKing the shit out of it. Now, the biggest MVP that we're having right now, and which is making huge damage on the defensive lines north of Opitne, is the RBK. RBK, in this case, cluster aerial bombs used by the Russians. I honestly think, and I'm not going to lie to you guys, it's so long overdue, especially if those kits are equipped with a cone and a gliding planner contraption. The way we saw it with the Fab 250 M54. If you remember how it's like a cylinder with no aerodynamic nose. And in order to make that shit fly, the Russians for a long while tried just with a kit, but now apparently they also put in aerodynamic cone, which means that that thing is going to fly a lot better. But if they did it with the 250, they're going to be able to do it also with the RBKs, which means a lot of pain for Ukrainians. We've already seen it. But on top of the RBKs, what we have seen recently is a lot more usage of the Uragan cluster ammunition, and probably Smash as well. How to differentiate between both? The RBK is going to be a very short burst, very accumulated on a straight line, because if you see how the bomb is, once it starts spinning and shading everything, the line covered is a lot narrower than the Smash or the Uragan cluster ammunitions. And also it lasts a lot. It lasts a lot longer when it's coming from Smash, because the release is apparently phased out. No, apparently it is phased out, but I mean, I'm going to provide also a distinction between what I think is RBK or aerial cluster bombs and what I think is rocket cluster bombs. But most of it is like larger area, longer dispersion pattern for the Smash, shorter, narrower, a lot more focused for RBK, and therefore the RBK is, in my opinion, if it hits right, the exact thing that the Russians need to completely cream out the locations. Now, I also want to point to something else. Thank you very much to Kabul Rapist 88, who pointed me out the source. Initially, it was identified, so the source was a Renault TRM 2000 truck from the 23rd Mechanized Brigade that was apparently wasted. Given the location, the headquarters of the brigade, and given the snow around it, I surmise, and I'm pretty sure at 99.9%, that was a attempted transfer of whatever from Pokrovsk, which is the headquarters of the 23rd, towards Avdiivka, probably around Ocheretine or a bit further in Novo-Alexandrivka. Basically, what this means that despite everything that was claimed, they are adding new trash. The 116th was slowly moved out from the Zaporozhye area towards Avdiivka. The 47th, you know already, I don't need to discuss. I also posted a recent beef between the 54th or the 53rd, I think, and one of the two, and the 110th. Why? Because both sides now are accusing each other of letting each other down under Russian artillery bombardment, FPV attacks, and so on and so on. So where are we? Does it come that now we're suddenly invaded by a flurry of gore posting? That's one thing I want to also address. Ukrainian PR has gone into a copy paste of what they did during Bakhmut. Now I need to tell Artyomovsk because that place is for right now there is no way Ukrainians get it back. So what the Ukrainians did with Artyomovsk, every time a pawn of that chessboard was falling, Soledar, Novo, Danilovka, and so on. Every single part, no, not no Danilovka, that's bullshit. Dobropila, Kudmirovka, and so on. Every time one of these positions was falling, they started gore posting, showing shit on the field, FPV and hate drops, and every time it was, yeah, Russians are losing hundreds and hundreds. Reality is, because we have to come there as well, reality is that losses have gone up. As I said, I made a quick analysis between 15 and 20% as a minimum because the Russians have went into the same offensive posture. When you compare it, once again, I use Poterinet because it's a lot faster in updates than Mediazona, and Mediazona is withholding information because they are playing a political game by showing, 1,300 dead on, I don't know, 10 days, 12 days. The reality is that no, it's not true. A lot of those names have been accumulated from September to October, and they allegedly added them because they need to make sure. While other outlets like Poterinet, as I said, I have added those names over 15 days ago as a minimum. Therefore, as I said, you are going to be a lot less surprised by sites like Poterinet or No War. Both sides are owned by Ukrainians and Russian liberals, so it's going to be harmful for you if you are a hardcore Zigger, but it is what it is. You need to keep in touch with the war that way as well. So basically, we're going back to the around 2,000 KIA per month confirmed. This is, when you compare it again on Poterinet, is very much in line with what was happening towards the 4 or 5 months of Bakhmut in 2023. And therefore, this logic is unfortunately going to continue that way. There is not going to be any kind of state-of-the-art change in the Russian operating game right now, not because the Russians do not want to reduce their casualties, but simply you cannot have a large staging point, you cannot have a element of surprise, you cannot do anything above the company. Within a company, 2 or 3, you can maybe assault certain positions, make them fall, and then suddenly the domino can fall, but you can have so much losses, especially if you're trying areas when you have never tried to demine, when you have never tried to go forward. Hopefully, with the introduction of the RBK on a rather regular basis, maybe some points of contention are going to be better treated. So at least on the infantry side, attacks from the Russian military are going to be a lot more fruitful. But right now, how it's going to work is going to be rinse and repeat. Just barge into the front line, push back the Ukrainians between 4 and 7 kilometers, roll over those 7 kilometers that you just got by sacrificing a lot of people and mechanized assets, reoccupy the position, orientate your attack, force the Ukrainians to start defending multiple positions, tire them down, move on, take the positions, and so on. It's going to be a rinse and repeat. I already told you guys it's October. Unfortunately, Russian attack is not going to be different from Ukrainian attack unless, as I said, the Ukrainians are completely depleted on those areas. And once that happens, you are going to go through probably the most unbearable Zrada cope, and we are probably going to get very close to the US trying something to slow the Russians down. I'm saying this with a straight fucking head. If these things goes like how we're seeing Avdiivka, if every single step in the Donbass is going to take 2 to 3 months, huge losses, then breakthrough, then advancement, the Konstantinovka falls, then the Shkovka falls, etc., etc. If within 9 to 10 months the plan works, how is it working in Avdiivka, Ukraine is out of Donbass. It's a matter of fact. They're out of Donetsk Oblast for all purposes. And then at some point, I think, unfortunately for a lot of you guys, the Russians are gonna make dog whistles in terms of, hey, we can keep this for ages. We can completely grind these fucking motherfuckers to the ground. Please allow them to save face. This is not gonna go to the Ukrainians. No, this is going to the US, because right now the only side that is keeping the Ukrainian army in the game is U.S. deliveries, intel, funds, and connections. Let's say it like this. So basically, let's review the whole point. On the south, the advance was actually the moment they, through the biggest of surprises, early November, they completely shagged the Ukrainian defenders on the industrial area. It was a done deal, especially at some point when they tried something very unfortunate for the guy who got hate dropped by the Ukrainians. But it showed that the Ukrainians were too thin on that spot, and then the Piatashki unit and the 114th in the area started doing air drops and attack Ukrainian reinforcements. And then we had the most marvelous thing ever, the tunnel assault, which basically solved the situation. Now, on that part, I want to make it clear to you guys that tunnel thing, no, the Russians didn't start digging for months. What they did probably is they had underground maps of the city, of the industrial zone. They checked where they could get from those undergrounds upstairs. Ukrainians probably couldn't have access or defend those areas because they were pressed above ground. And then that's what happened. Russians digged whatever they need to dig to get to the point when they were going to break out. They did it. Thing was perfect. If you saw what happens 30 seconds after the hole was done and they had breached the trench system, two assault fire teams went out, cleared the shit. Ukrainians fled. Not many of them were able to flee. About 10 to 15 guys. Half of them at least got hate dropped or FPV. It was a very nice operation, honestly, incredibly well executed, although we don't have the whole footage, so we should always be a bit wary of these PR shots. When it works in our favor, we have to say it as well. But it also showed that the positions were extremely thinly manned on the Ukrainian side. And what I'm really thinking right now, given how it's going, I think they are literally trying to leave without telling everybody. So whoever is now in Avdiivka are probably either gonna at some point get tasked with getting out without getting shanked, or they don't know what's going on. Because I cannot believe that whole area was defended by maybe 60, 80 guys. Like, come on. I know that Avdiivka is not a huge city, but you could at least post between 1,000, 2,000 guys to defend it, especially as fortified as it was. Now, the most important part in this is that once the prom was gone, now they can safely, there is no safety in war, of course, but they can have a better shot at attacking again from Tsarskaya Kotka and moving up adjacent to the 9th microdistrict. Once that shit is done, you're going to have a mini cauldron on the Zenit base that are not attacking. I don't know what they're doing. There are almost no Ukrainians on the Zenit base. I really think that they don't want to risk FPVs. And they are also treating completely the tree lines north of Opitne, next to Severne, and in Severne itself. We saw the strikes at Tonenke. We saw the strikes at Lastochkino. We saw the strikes at Karlivka, at Semenivka, at Berdichi. I mean, right now it looks like something decent. Gone are the first 3 weeks where they were fucking barging to expel the Ukrainians from the positions, and I know that it's very hard for us to agree on this. I think they went above and beyond what they had planned, but at least the objectives were seized. Now, the most important problem that we are seeing when it comes to the Ukrainian defense is that they are making every single mistake we thought they were going to make. So, first of all, now they completely have stopped trying to defend Stepove. Their FPVs are attacking Stepove, but their mechanized forces, they're not there. Now they are cutting. Again, I mean, if you check the map when they are defending, there is a huge square that is completely untouched. I want to have a look at satellite images between Stepove and the positions where they were with the Bradley at the coke plant, because I really think that they are trying to avoid a huge minefield they have put there to stop the Russians from completely overrunning that position and going toward Berdishi. But by giving out that there is something in there, they're just making it easier for the Russians first to avoid that thing, but also where to use the infantry. Now, the negative point is that we are barely on time. I had said, as I said, between 2 and 3 months. I was counting for 10 weeks, to be honest, to be advanced enough within Avdiivka so that the Ukrainians would start thinking about evacuating the position. Now, I do not think it's going to be a Bakhmut. Bakhmut, you need to also recall, it was a 8 months operation. So it started end of September, properly 22nd of September, and it ended the 20th of May, according to Prigozhin, of course. For all purposes, it was done by the 5th of May, when the Alley of Roses was completely lost and Ukrainians got attacked while evacuating from Kromovo Road. It was done, but let's say 22 to 20. In this case, we are more or less around, I'd say 1 month, 3 weeks. This, of course, is a problem because, as I said, our biggest situational awareness with both sides is that they are delivering, once again, a lot of PR shots without the context, and we only have to review the situation once we have actual geolocations on the ground. So, as I told you, when the Bradley was hit, we knew from like 2 weeks before that the Ukrainians weren't in control of Stepove. We had no proof. When the Ukrainians showed that the Bradley was attacking Stepove, blah, 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 and we saw it go away, we knew that for the whatever they had shown to us was fishy. Like, why would the Bradley not stay there and move out? Why there is no infantry also taking out the Russians and taking them prisoner? Well, he knew, simply because it was impossible for the Ukrainian infantry to come by, given they were under artillery and under FP fire. The Bradley was lost. Then we had another footage from a Leopard tank hitting from the corner of Stepove towards the closest houses to the railway track. There again, it was fishy because at the same time we had a video with the same another Bradley getting hit along the Stepove line, and I already posted that the Russians, the guys who had survived that attack, weren't really sure what they're saying because there were 2 Ukrainians dead and the others were obviously Russians. So overall, the biggest situation in here is that the official sources are extremely bad. Unofficial sources are even worse. So in order for us to know where the fucking line of contact is right now is literally a puzzle. And you are forced to take whatever information and try to puzzle it again. But with what we're seeing, and that's something that the Ukrainians, I think the footage with the Bradley was extremely informative for me. The Ukrainians are really in a bad spot right now. They are not able to cut through the open ground for reasons I surmise are a minefield. They cannot defend from inside the coke plant, probably once again, because once they're at the coke plant, they're going to get in difficulty to navigate with the coke plant and probably going to get the UMPK. And the second most important part is that the defense line, given when we saw the Russian moving along the coke plant, is now well within the coke plant for infantry and outside the coke plant for mechanized assets. What does this mean for the Ukrainians? Is that if they want to recover anything, and so far I'm going to repeat something I always said, the Ukrainian army hasn't recovered a single position in 7 weeks. In Artyomovsk, they had recovered 4 times, at least 7 different positions within the first 3 weeks. Then within the first 3 months, they had completely repelled one assault next to the macadam factory on the eastern part of Bakhmut. Here, none of this is happening. Every single step the Russians are taking, except really on the southwest, is not being pushed back. And therefore, this is what I'm having as a trouble, is that, in my opinion, what's happening here is that the Ukrainians have understood finally that they cannot have a Bakhmut here because it's just suicide. If it is that like that, I think it's gonna be a domino effect up north. So Ocheretine, Novobakhmutivka, Dzerzhinsk, and so on. This puts Konstantinovka in extreme danger. So whoever is gonna give that order to evacuate Avdiivka in a way or another, he better be Zelensky. I'm just saying this. Because if this goes the way I'm seeing it go, this would be a domino effect, and there is the war. For people who want to see things coming from afar, this is the war. Ukraine loses Avdiivka. The modus operandi the Russians are using is the easily reciprocable from the Ukrainian side, but they cannot do it because they don't have the assets and the men to do it. But the Russians can rinse and repeat this thing as much as they want. Of course, it's not bottomless, it's not limitless. But finally, when you think and you see whatever they did in Avdiivka, it's not worse than Robotine. It's just happening in shorter time and with a lot better results. So this is what I'm saying. If everybody's a bit scared on how things are going, the dead, the gore being posed by Ukrainians, guys, I told you, it's going to be blood, tears, damage, destruction, losses. But there is no other way to do it right now. We would like to, complete dominate the skies, lob X-29s to these motherfuckers. It's just not possible because even strategic reasons. The borders are not closed. America can drop whatever they want. As I said, it's going to be what it's going to be. It's useless discussing doctrine without taking into account the fact that it is like this. It's over. That aspect, that visual point of view that this needs to happen, how the fuck are still HIMARS striking? I need to say, a lot of fucking Gherkinians are really rubbing me the wrong way because, like, let it go, guys. 70 kilometers, highly mobile systems on both sides are untouchable right now. Like, it's not gonna change. The only way to fucking track them is to have complete control of the sky. And unfortunately, this is still not possible, despite the Lancets, the Gerans, the Shahids, whatever you want. It's just not possible. And it's going to get a little bit more difficult within 2 to 4 months when the first F-16s are supposed to take the skies. Now, overall, my main concern is that the operation is going a bit too well. Okay, there are losses, everything is there. I'm not completely denying it, quite the contrary. And honestly, another digression I want to make, we are in 2023, almost 2024, and every day on the Russian military, there are guys gearing up, putting themselves into positions where they know that 50, 20, 30% of the guys that are in those groups are not going to come back in one piece or not coming back at all. They know that is not going to help them against an FPV, against a high drop, against artillery. they can go fast, they can go slow, but if they are in the eye of the cyclone, it's game over. Mentally, those people being able to do this, I've always said this, are a completely different breed. I'm not gonna lie. I've been to the military, but I don't know if I could do this. If it was like fresh, like first to third, fifth, 10th week, okay. But we're going towards the 101st week of this war. It's very complex mentally and psychologically to understand. On the other side, I see a lot of psychopathic and sociopathic tendencies on both sides. FPV crews, for instance, or hate drop crews, literally are gonna be future PTSD candidates if they're not already so. And this is how a long-term conflict and long-term distress is going to act on everybody. So what I'm saying most of the time is like I think whoever is pushing Ukraine to keep fighting, they should also understand this. The Russian side is going to get worse mentally. We saw that they still are fucking saving Ukrainians that are wounded or whatever. But guys, it's going to get worse. It's getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and a lot of things that the Russians are doing right now is straight up just waste them up. Ukrainians keep doing what they've been doing since the beginning of the war because they think they are allowed to do that. There's their sacred duty to kill as much Russians as they want. But at the end, I'm going to say once again, every single day that Ukrainians still keep fighting the way they are doing right now, especially around Avdiivka, is one more drop to the bucket when the Russians are going to become a lot more bloodthirsty. And I'm saying, you surrender as a POW, you disappear. You surrender as a POW, you end up on a promotional video for box cutters, etc., etc., etc. I've already said this. What the 47th and the 110th are doing right now, complaining about that would be hypocritical because we're literally pushing for a same type of reply from the Russians. But the point is this: at this stage of the war, you have the choice to do it or not. And of course, you would say, but you would be stupid to let this guy come back if he's wounded. Just finish him. Some will even cope saying on the Ukrainian side it's a coup de grace or whatever. You still have the choice to do it or not. And Ukrainians have no problems with that. So when everybody's gonna come to me like, no, war crimes and shit, no, 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 no. The people who are doing this with drones, they're safe. They are not in danger. And this is true also for the Russian side. I'm not saying I've never been a coper on that aspect. But given the fact they are on the other side, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter what we do. Everybody has a choice. Ukrainians who do this have made there, and I would hope that whatever FPV guys get caught, whatever drone guys get caught by the Russians, I hope those guys do not end as prisoners of war. And I don't give a fuck what you're gonna think about it. Digression ended. But most of it what's gonna happen right now, in my opinion, is the following: the Russians are finally gonna enter the eastern part of the game, and slowly, slowly, they're gonna start choking more and more around Opitne, taking over Severnia. I think end of the December they should completely own the Severnia road, be that by fire control or physically. And then we are going to have finally the road of death, or road of life, call it whatever you want, between mid-January and end of January. If it is like this, this I think is the fastest possible outcome. If it is like this, you are going to suffer from cope threads, for complaint threads on the Ukrainian side, and we can start trolling. And guys, I'm going to literally say, bring out every single drop video that Ukrainians have posted right now, and post them every time they're going to complain about evacuation, getting ATGM'd, FPV'd, every single thing. We're going to do this. The moment this thing happens, the moment that the Ukrainians have one main road to evacuate the fucking city and they've lost major positions within the city, I personally, I'm going to find videos of hate drops, of FPVs, of Bradleys running over Russians, and I'm going to post them. And I hope there are many of those videos on the Russian side. It's simply how the tables turn. Now, the second part is how is Ukraine going to cope with this? Avdiivka is one thing. I'm not saying it's a done deal yet. I said it. If the Russians are at the Belarus Street in Avdiivka, then it's game over. If the Russians are in Severne, it's game over. If the large part of the coke plant is taken, it's game over. But so far, as I said, we're not there. The moment this happens, the moment you can see the cauldron closing, then it's done. It's finished. Avdiivka is done, and then we're going to see how much time are the Russians going to take to reshape themselves, put themselves in a position to push towards Kamyansk, because Karlovka and Kamyansk are the most important part. If the Russians can push the Ukrainians beyond the Karlovka reservoir and establish that as a natural barrier, then it's a done deal. Pokrovsky is in deep trouble. And the Russians have now more than 220 kilometer buffer zone to defend Avdiivka again. That's a 22 to 27 kilometer depth. So Donetsk doesn't get blown up, but also now you have a double salient created north and south of this salient with the dangers into Pokrovsk. The biggest problem for Ukrainians right now is they're going to find out exactly what they failed to do in Zaporozhye in Pokrovsk. And once again, I already posted, once you take Pokrovsk or put Pokrovsk in the danger map, then you have this line Bakhmut, Severodonetsk, with Konstantinovka in between making a problem. But once you eliminate Pokrovsk, Konstantinovka is almost done. And then you start seeing the domino effect and the house of cards fall within the Ukrainian whole Donetsk Oblast. Now, how the Ukrainians are going to stop this? Everybody's now asking, what about the mobilization? Gammon posted a TG from the TCK, the Sumy TCK. I actually had the discussion from our group, and I said it's very. The numbers were from August actually, so they were a bit outdated. Only whatever they tried to do in Sumy was reached. Now the numbers for this month are 8%. So the roll call on Sumy is even worse than ever. And Sumy can be an outlier because the Russians literally fucking attacking that place and they are killing people in there. But we have Lviv with at about 21%. And this is bad, guys. It's very bad. You have 21% of your targets with enlistment. Comparatively, Zakarpattia, so the Hungarian region within Ukraine, they are at 41, 42%. Now, what the fuck is going on? And of course, there was logic that it was a ethnic cleansing these guys, but the reality is also there. Nobody wants to fight and die right now. How are they going to solve it? As I said, if you solve the human resource part, you have to also solve the supply part. And if we take a couple of details, we see that, for instance, it will take a year to receive 10,000, 12,000 rifles from France. It will take 3 to 6 months to take over 11,000 rifles from Canada and about 3 million rounds. There is just not enough resource. We saw FNC files being used for some of the new Mobics. And some of the new helmets, MCH 2000 helmets from the USA, are literally given like that, and there are no covers or nothing. Guys are just spraying Ukrainian stencils on there, and tada, you have a new helmet going. There is a sense of urgency right now when the manpower source is low, and this is even more demonstrated by a mechanized brigade with the 23rd that wasn't even ready yet, wasn't even full yet, being thrown in Avdiivka, which supposedly, according to everybody, is not a strategic point on the map. Therefore, I'm going to get to what I said, that right now the supply problem for Ukrainians is not true. They supposedly have whatever they want for what they asked for, according to the Ukrainians themselves. What they don't have is that they don't have the men to fucking deal with this situation. They are stalling everything. So the attacks in Verbove, for instance, and in Novoprokopivka are exactly for that reason. They are stalling the Russians and trying to make it like they are still trying. In Krinky is the most important part because the areas that supposedly have conquered or not conquered, call it the way you want, are minuscule and they're not giving anything. They cannot even get out of the woods. The most important part in this is that, as I said, we addressed this in May 2023 with this great moment when we had this guy who insulted me about, oh, you don't know anything about artillery. Everybody's saying right now there is a dip in everything, and Ukraine has to make do with whatever they have until February. What's going to happen in February is not very relevant, in my opinion. I don't think that supply-wise something is going to change. I do not see the artillery assets that Ukraine needs being given in February. I don't see where they're going to come. Actually, I do, and I'm going to speak about this a bit later. But when you see what supposedly Ukraine had before the war, what they supposedly captured, what supposedly got delivered to it, Ukraine is supposed to have more tanks than ever. We're not seeing them. We simply are not seeing them. Ukraine is still working with its major formation, armored formation, being still the platoon. So basically, 3, 4, 5 tanks. They tried a mechanized company attack, assault in Zaporozhye. It ended in shit and tears. Twice, because they also tried this in 2022 around Pologi. So we are in this situation since forever. Ukraine just simply cannot master or use assets it supposedly has, unless they don't have them. That's something else. So everybody's like, Abrams is coming, this is coming, this is coming, this is coming. We are seeing pictures of Leopards A1 with some Viscon, and first thing I noticed is that these Leopards are not in good state. So their area of action, their action radius is going to be 10 to 15 kilometers, because you don't want to lose that tank somewhere when your MTO cannot grab it back and pull it back to base to repair. So these tanks are literally as useless as the T-62s. The difference is the T-62s from Russian side, they can do 20, 30, 50 kilometers. So we are in this situation where everything that has been given to Ukraine right now is useless for what Ukraine pretends to do or wants to do. Everything that I have right now is going to shine in a defensive war, and that I completely agree. But that's not what Ukraine needs. Ukraine needs to liberate territory. Ukraine needs to make sure that Russia does not kick itself out from the Donbass region. And when you see what Ukraine is supposed to align, when you see what Ukraine is supposed to do with whatever it has received, it's still not there. So the thing is this: either Ukrainians do not have the men, possible, apparently it's so. Other Ukrainians do not have the material for whatever reason, spare parts, quality, sustenance, maintenance, planning. Either there is a combined effect which leads to something very basic, is that Ukraine actually strategically has already lost. And what's happening here with all this fucking talk about negotiations, attacks and attacks, winter campaign, is just Ukraine bargaining for more time and a better kind of position when they go and sit to the table and literally open their butt cheeks for Monkey to put the banana. I do not see anything else. Because there is nothing there. What is being announced this winter is mostly defensive shit. I do not see 150 new Abrams. I do not see billions of small arms round that should enable a attacking military to go on. I do not see, despite every announcement that they're going to be new, mobilized. I do not see that. As I said, we are not there. I have another piece of footage I'm going to post on my timeline when it says that 9% of what was in Lviv. 9% of what we are asking is there, and the guys we fucking get there is because either they were given by their spouse, because the spouse is absolutely fucked up and she doesn't want him at house anymore. You have this logic where in Ukraine now the war is for the areas that are still under mobilization, people who don't have a protection. War is now a taboo. You can avoid it. It doesn't exist. It's going to exist if the Russians keep going with the de-energization campaign. But for a lot of people in the western part of the country, it's not there. Unless, I said, you see guys coming in between 4 planks or 6 planks, whatever you want to call it. And this is the main issue here. Like, has Zelensky lost the country? And we're not speaking about him making deals with US or whoever and putting people on the line. I'm saying the country itself. Is the country becoming apathic again like it was before Zelensky was there and before the war started, when Ukrainians were more or less like the Russians, just poor and with less perspective? And this is my idea right now. I think Zelensky, whatever he might have managed within its political circle, is losing the country. So unless something happens and people are fucking marched towards the military enlistment offices, this is where I'm very scared now. Because if you start this mass levy, we saw what happened with the Russians. Ukrainians are not different on that. The only difference is that Ukrainians do not have the same luxury as the Russians had in September 2022, when they literally could basically go to whatever Commonwealth of Independent States country and it was done. Ukrainians do not have that. You need to pay to be able to find a way to go out, and half of the times you're going to get caught. And this is where we're going with this situation. So either I'm mistaken and there will be a mass levy on the Ukrainian side to 300,000 people for a defensive/offensive war, but that will have problems getting equipped unless the US starts with another 50 billion equipment plan, which is very possible, by the way. But given the rate of refurbishment that the Americans did with their 31 Abrams, and also with the Polish program of 110 FEPs, whatever happens there is going to be 6 months to a year. But the war is going to continue, so you will still have to fucking feed the war machine. Therefore, we're going to have the exact same situation one that everybody was mocking Russia for. That you need to enlist people, but also feed them to the death machine. And it's done. Once you feed them to the death machine, you're going to start slowly eroding whatever units you're going to have there. It happened in Bakhmut/Artemovsk for Ukraine. It happened for the Russian side in Luhansk when they liberated Luganda. They literally went on an ammunition spree, and they let loose a lot of areas, especially in Kharkov area. And we know the results. So my whole point here is that either it's going to be a Hail Mary for the Ukrainians, either it's no Hail Mary, and what makes sense is that the Americans have already decided they want to drop Ukraine somewhere around the elections. Especially because, I'm sorry to say, you guys, I know that a lot of people are going to say, you're crazy. I do not see Biden finishing a second term physically. It's going to be the last years of Brezhnev. So I really think that the off-ramp that everybody was supposedly trying to give to Putin is going to be found by the US for itself. I don't say that the war is going to be finished in 2024 for the American election. I think that the Americans, if the war keeps going like this, especially the Democratic Party, I'm not saying that Trump is going to change anything. I honestly think that Trump is going to go even deeper in this rabbit hole. But Trump is threatening the democratic narrative. And therefore, the Democrats will be panicking around March, April, if the Trump candidacy not only is confirmed, but his trending is confirmed. And the thing with Trump is that for as long as he doesn't do any stupid shit, and he has done so much trash during his first campaign and during his wake of his loss. So Trump right now, I think, is completely bulletproof for almost anything, unless he starts doing the shit he has been accused of. He calls Putin, or he has a golden shower moment somewhere in Moscow. So this is what I'm telling you. I think the more I'm looking at it, I don't see where the goods are going to come from. Even if the Europeans start delivering, don't forget they have delivered 300,000 rounds in the thickest of the fight. So the 700,000 that are going to come, they would need more guns. And I said there is a source right now. You can still pick some guns. The Indians have a fuck ton of FH-77 in stores they don't use. These fucking morons went to Nigeria to try to have their FH-77. They can find between 100 and 150 barrels, newly made, not newly made. They can somehow artillery can be still found for the Ukrainians. What quality, what level, what sustenance. For as long as the Russians keep going with this 250, 300 barrels per 10 months, the Ukrainian logic is going to be just the same. They're going to sustain this never-ending death by 1,000 cuts. But as I said, there is no fourth generation to sustain the 300,000 to 500,000 that is being pretended to be assembled. In order to fucking support these guys, you need to triple whatever artillery park is now in Ukraine. And nobody's able to start reproducing 900 barrels. It's just the way it is. So this is my point right now. Whoever is speaking about mobilization, I do not see both sides coming together, unless it's gonna be mid-wave assault, and then all the best. I mean, like, if you want to use it like the Russians used Mobix last year, all the best, because it's gonna allow the Russians to call enough Ukrainians to make whatever the Ukrainians are going to try and do as offensive action, let's say next June, simply untenable. And also, do not forget, the Russians can always match that mobilization by the same assets. And apparently, North Korea is also able to deliver barrels if it's purely on artillery side alone. There we get to the point, the core of this point. Right now, there is nothing, and Snake said this, there is nothing serious in how the West is engaging this war. And the biggest problem of this is that anything that the West is supposed to be doing now is going to pan out in 2025, Q2 or Q3. This means Ukraine is going to fucking suffer for at least 2025 if they're brave enough to suffer for over 16, 17 months. And I think for Russia, it's all good. Right now, growth is okay. Okay, there are losses. Roughly 36,000 a year with the current terms. Dead. Add about 80,000 wounded. Not good, not great, not terrible, to use a term that you all know, but fairly sustainable. It's not good to speak like this, but it is what it is. Even 50,000 KIA per year wouldn't change much for Russia as it stands right now. And don't get me started with the bullshit about irreplaceable males and that shit. It doesn't work like this. When you are in a war cycle, it doesn't work like that. Ukraine is the very fucking epitome of that. And this is not even going to be decided by the willpower of the Ukrainian people, because the Ukrainian people doesn't have a willpower right now. What they're doing right now is just suffering. It's you are beating a piece of meat when you're Russian. Sometimes that dead horse kicks back, sometimes painfully, but it's just a reflex. Everything else right now for Ukraine, when it comes to strategic and operational point of view, is gloomy, is bleak. And it sends, again, this message that to be America's foe is dangerous, to be its friend is fatal. And I'm going to end here. Just to say, you guys, if within 2 weeks they have gone beyond Tsarskaya Kotka and they are within the coke plant, two things. Russians have managed to do what I thought they would do. Hopefully, I get like to gloat, although I don't like to gloat. I told you why. Psychologically, sometimes it's very complicated for me to understand how the Russians are doing it. And then the Ukrainians would have decided to leave the place. Or then the guys commanding the defensive zone are complete trash, which is also possible. We've seen Ukrainians do even worse mistakes. That's it. That's what I had to say about Avdiivka. So things are going rather well. There are no disturbance in the force. Let's say it like this. Krinky is a non-factor. And every single attempt right now on Zaporozhye is noise. I made a thread over Krinky as well. Right now is a lot of noise in order for the Russians to let go of Avdiivka. So yeah, guys, if you want to intervene, it's going to be rather short, about 20 minutes. I know that usually I say this, but it's going to be real 20 minutes this time. Thank you very much, guys. If you want to intervene, just request. Yes, take on.
Hey.
Yeah, man.
Hey. Yeah, just a quick.
Oh shit, bro! I lost you.
Oh, hey, just a quick comment on the on why we're not seeing vehicles that have supposedly been delivered. I mean, we talked about this before, but I mean, obviously for the people who may have not heard this before, but that maintaining like military vehicles have a very high breakdown rate, especially in combat, especially when they're put under stress, especially when they're being driven back and forth. And this is why, like, from the first like couple of weeks in Zaporozhye, that offensive, they basically the Ukrainians were saying like, oh, they had to reserve a portion of their Bradleys. They were slightly damaged, but they would just reserve them for cannibalization.
Yep.
Because they just don't. Again, like all these vehicles, like Ukrainians don't actually have parts for them. So if they break, the only way that you're going to repair that is if you pull apart off another slightly broken or trashed vehicle and then put it in and basically do the cannibalization. So any slight damage they take is just going to deplete the force very, very quickly. And this is a problem that you run into in a lot of third world militaries that don't have the indigenous supply chains to actually keep these machines fed with parts. And anything that and the situation, for example, with the for example, repair like Leopards, they have to get sent back to Poland. And of course, Poland can't even do most of the repairs. So most of the damaged Leopards that get sent to Poland have to get sent back to Germany, and that's going to take another 9 months. Like it's just a never ending, like it's just a ridiculous logistical train that just never fucking. That makes absolutely no sense for a military that's actually supposedly engaged in like offensive combat. Because you basically, in that situation, you really want to push parts to the front, or frontline repair shops, and they don't. Ukrainians don't have that luxury. They're not incapable of doing this.
I absolutely agree with you. And the thing we discussed this, we talked about the fact that they had chosen at some point the most complicated manner of operating, because to go from Orikhiv to Rabotino, for instance, it was a 20, then a 25, then a 30-kilometer ride back and forth, so between 40 and 60 kilometers at some point. And then every time they needed to disengage, that was more dangerous for the vehicles to go back than actually stay on the front and push as much as they could on the front. And this is, I think, not only a sign of that, but also a sign of absolutely very poor planning. And we had the guy from 47th say that when you think about it, the whole idea was the Russians see Western gear, they run away. Of course, it didn't happen, and probably it was also said in jest, but that's where I agree with you. We agreed about this. We spoke about this. Ukraine hasn't been given the tools to succeed, not in combat per se, although sustainment is part of combat, but in exploiting whatever result they were going to go. The whole point was, I think the Americans and the Western planners were like, if these guys fuck up and somehow get rolled back to Orikhiv, we don't want whole stocks of Leopard engines, transmissions, whole tanks to get actually captured by the Russians and have the exact thing that West did with the Russians, with all these damaged, destroyed, or burnt out tanks that were started to put in front of Russian embassies here and there. So yeah, I completely agree with you on that one. You know that there is no discussion.
Yeah, and then also like with Abrams, I mean, it's even more of a pain in the ass with Abrams, because again, this is very common for Abrams, like after just doing training exercises, like a month of exercises, to just have a new engine dropped in and to have the old one sent back for servicing. Like, where is Ukraine actually going to accomplish this? Like, how are they going to accomplish this? And this is just.
Remember that I really had this feeling, and you admonished me for that I really thought that the FEPs from Poland were going to be actually used by Ukraine in order for them to have the extra oomph, and so the Polish were going to also to give Ukrainians the capability to repair. But now we are seeing that the delivery for Poland itself is slower, and for parts is slower. So the only way to do that is U.S. Troops doing the maintenance and the support, which for the moment is a big no-no.
Yeah, and also regarding the question of mobilization. I mean, ironically enough, like Zelensky is very, very good at the internal political fighting, but the things in doing so, he's basically gutted the administrative capacity of the state.
Yeah.
So basically, he's able to keep his own power secure within the state. At the same time, he's been cutting the hands and feet off the state by, for example, by mass firing people in the Ministry of Defense, mass firing the recruitment commissars. Like these people are the gears that make the machine work. But he basically tossed them out because they're a threat to his power. And once you do that,
a small digression here. It's literally a rerun of Saddam Hussein post Gulf War One, man. Actually, post Iran-Iraq war. It's fabulous how much common points there are between Saddam Hussein and Zelensky, and it's not in jest. It's literally, if you check how it worked when he sacked the two operational commanders post Iran-Iraq war, and he replaced a whole bunch of the special operation command with what would become the Fedayin command. I mean, like, it's completely fucked up.
Yeah, but this means that he himself would be secure, but just increasingly incapable of actually ruling his country and accomplishing strategic goals. I mean, which actually does play well because as you know, like I have a more maximalist vision of where this ends up, and as this progresses, basically, what you're see acceleration of casualties and acceleration of sort of the degradation of the Ukraine's capabilities. So the point at which you have entire units just disintegrating. This will be. I mean, this is just, for example, like you look at the way that German KIAs just exponentially increased in the last 10 months of the war.
Yeah, exactly.
You went from something like 100,000 KIAs per month to over 300,000 per month in 1945. I mean, once a state loses administrative capacity and the collapse starts happening, well, I mean, then the body starts stacking up. And this would actually allow, like, perhaps Russia to actually move faster in terms of territory. And in terms of the mass mobilization, I actually want to see Ukraine actually try to do this, in the sense that this will just hasten the collapse of the state.
I mean, exactly what I was going to say. The best way to actually fuck up a mass mobilization is to do it too fast without the tools.
Right.
Literally, once again, a Saddam moment in 2003.
Yeah. I mean, there's actually an even more famous example of this. I mean, this is in the this is in the 4th century, the Battle of the Fei River. This is one of the few cases in sort of ancient history where you actually had a full, an actual total mobilization. This was in China. This was a battle where one of the northern barbarian kingdoms was trying to consolidate the country after having taken over most of the territory. But essentially, the guy called for a total mobilization. In total, almost 1 million men were drafted, but the logistics and the administrative capacity of the state were so poor that only about 200,000 actually arrived at the front. The rest were still mobilizing. There's essentially a trail of soldiers that went back hundreds of kilometers, and then at the battle site itself, the 200,000 that arrived basically were trying to perform a simple tactical maneuver to withdraw behind a river, and they routed because of poor communication, and they were basically caught with their pants down at just the right moment. And then subsequently afterwards, the state collapsed, and all the mobilized troops that were just milling around, they became like local bandits and militias. Like this has a cascading effect if you fuck up a mass mobilization.
Yeah, because at some point the guys they don't know what to do. They're simply stuck. Going back, given that the structure is gone, makes it even worse. Actually, in a certain sense, that's what happened very early on when the Ukrainians tried to mobilize a lot of people for the defense of Kiev and also the northern part. You remember the scenes that you had marauding guys. Over 800 people were arrested in Kiev alone or were shot because the moment they had the guns, first thing they did is going home to home and trying to steal. No, I completely agree with you, and this is in a sense what if they're not ready, but they want to do it because they fear for the war. I think it would be the best uh, demonstrator of where the Ukrainians are really at this point. And on that, I agree for you. I agree with you. Like everything that we spoke about is that at the beginning I was like not afraid, but I was like maybe we shouldn't wish for the mobilization. But now what I'm seeing, all these weapon pledges, all these ammunition pledges, and so on, you can see that these guys are literally cannot sustain combat operations for more than 2 to 3 months if they are on the defensive. So we had this discussion, I think, also with the team more criminal. When, for instance, if you have to, attach the ammunition given with the 11,000 Canadian rifles, you're going to have about 27 to 28 magazines for each. Given that if every magazine technically has a complement of six, every rifle has a complement of 6 magazines. That means that basically you're going to have five reloads. So in the worst case scenario, it's going to be 5 days of combat. In best case scenario, maybe 20 days, because you are, in defensive positions, you don't need to fire your rifle that much and so on. But the moment you need to fire it, we've seen how both sides operate with their ammo. I mean, like, what is this joke? The rifle part, the number of rifles pledged is actually huge. You can equip easily 4 or 5 brigades with it, and I think that it's a very nice pledge on Canada's side. But the ammunition that goes with it is like, what exactly are you trying to do, guys? And of course, we agree on the point that on both sides, the actual active troops are only a portion of the troops that are at the front. But that ammunition that you need to give the guys in there, it's still the allocation. You cannot say, okay, you guys go there with 5 magazines, and the guys who need to go actually at the front perform offensive duties, gonna get 30. It doesn't work like that. And that's the funny part, because if those guys are wasted, what remains on the back to defend your position is exactly what happened to the Russians in Kharkov. People who were maybe not poorly armed, but poorly articulated, not enough ammunition, and also they didn't want to die. They say that the professionals, quote unquote, shut the bed. Why should we pay for them? And now I completely agree with you, and this makes me a bit weird, because, like, okay, what exactly is happening? Is it a bit true then that what the Ukrainians say, that what is being given is just for them not to lose? But even on that aspect, defensively, it's not enough. And also, we
No,
spoke about the fact that I'm just going to finish. I'm really sorry. We spoke about the fact that America deal with the situation. Guys, I have a small situation here. I got my daughters calling. I'm putting this on off. I'm going as back as possible.
yeah, I mean, I was just going to remark, just make my point to everyone else here that early on, like you actually saw in the territorial defense units, like a lot of these like horror stories of just like entire companies of guys that only have like 20 rifles and maybe only a few hundred bullets. And they died in huge numbers, and a lot of people weren't even registered. And this is the kind of situation that you're kind of, and on top of that, you had dozens of people shot in friendly fire every single night. So this is the kind of situation Ukraine is going to head into if they do a mass mobilization. If they really want to commit to this kind of thing, this is without the equipment and facilities to train these people. You're just going to end up with essentially with the early days of chaos in Kiev, but pretty much for the entire country. This is just, and right now the administrative capacity of Ukraine, given is basically dire lack of resources and and constant turnover in the ranks of the local administration. It's going to be a much more fragile. It's even going to be a much more fragile. It's going to be in an even more fragile state this year than in early 2022.
Completely agree with you, man. And I basically this is my point as well. This is the only thing that we can have it like this. That's the only way we can deal with it. I really hope, as you said, that Ukraine makes the mistake of going for the mobilization because they're forced to. That would be the first giveaway that the strategic situation is dire. And I know that a lot of people are going to say, but is it maybe just because they want to, quote unquote, win this thing and they're going to make the sacrifices? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that a lot of people want to make sacrifices and they want to line up just a moment, guys.
Yeah, you only get one shot. Once you go down this path, you get one shot, and then you have to win the war in a few months, or everything collapses. Not just your economy, but your entire society collapses. So really, it's
Guys, I will have to
something.
leave. I'm really sorry to cut you. I will have to leave because I
Right?
need to get my daughter. She's at the train station.
All right.
I'm really sorry for this. Have a nice day. Bye.
Right. Later.